Hey there, welcome to episode 176 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. I'm the managing director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation. We're recording this at 8:46 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time here in Greater Vegas on Tuesday, June 30th, 2026, the end of our fiscal year. Hence the title, 4 years in. Title and topic, in fact. If you are not familiar with the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, or maybe you are not familiar with this audio program, well, this audio program is about our foundation, our activities, our plans, our goals, some challenges now and then. And today it will be about a retrospective of sorts, not in detail, not in depth. A few things, some learning moments, the take-home lessons, if you will, after 4 years since we formed, although some of the lessons took place before we formed, so I'll touch on that a little bit. It has been a learning experience. Our 5th year begins tomorrow, hopefully with some better possibilities on deck. We're off to a better start anyway than the 4th year. So we'll touch on that a little bit. Trying to be real without being overly, I'm not trying to hurl anything. No sour grapes, although there could be some improvements in Greater Vegas. That would be nice. So we'll keep it real. We'll run through our 4 years fairly quickly, and then we'll prepare for our 5th year to commence tomorrow and see where that goes. Big plans, big ideas, big possibilities. So, and then the Let's Innovate for Vegas program has been taking place every week. We adjusted the schedule. I can't remember when it was, but I'm sure if I review the history, or you can, we started with episode 0, and I don't think it was every week to get started, because I was trying to do more interviews and conversation. Those proved to be too much of a challenge. People, if they don't know what Innovate for Vegas Foundation is, then they are less inclined to want to be interested. And then we can't get the word out with people being interested enough to be on an audio program session. It's a vicious circle. So this is one of the lessons learned, which I don't remember if I touch on it. I'm going to go from memory. That is, I did not pre-write everything. I jotted down some notes. There are bullet items with don't forget this happened and so on. But this will just be a sort of a stream of consciousness, as the case may be. So on that note, I won't go into too much detail here because I'm going to go into that which follows. So we're a 501c3. We'll get into all that. So hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a very brief summary today. I only have the 2 links, so we'll touch on that, and then we'll get on with the program. And again, it's normally I structure programs with general topic, bullet items, right? Here it's going to be just kind of strung together. So we'll see what happens. Let's begin. The summary of today's episode. Our 4th fiscal year ends today, June 30th, as we record today's episode, almost requiring a retrospective episode. So here we are. The Innovate for Vegas domain names, plural, INNOV, V as in Victor, VATEFORV as in Victor, EGAS. Innovate for Vegas. No number 4, no spaces. Innovate FOR Vegas. We have an activity website. I'm not sure if I'm totally sold on activity, but it's where this stuff is actually happening. InnovateForVegas.org. It is, if we were going to have an original website, that would be it. The Innovate for Vegas Foundation was renamed from the Code for Vegas Foundation. So we used to be codeforvegas.org. And before that, it was codeforvegas.org, but it was the Code for Vegas Brigade. I don't know if Code for Vegas existed when it was formally called a brigade, but it was when there was a direct affiliation with Code for America. So innovateforvegas.org has that lineage. It's where our initiatives and the people participating in them would be sort of found. It's sort of a starting point. The Innovate for Vegas Foundation website, Innovate for Vegas, same spelling, .foundation, is a new addition to our portfolio of domains. It's where we'll keep the business stuff. Now, why keep these separate? Because some people don't want to navigate projects and details and so on. They want to find our financial dealings, our tax filings and donations and so on. By the way, we've done our annual tax filings every year, and we haven't had much in the way of donations. Probably 2 digits would be a fair summary. So no major financing going on here. But that sort of information can be available with a different presentation. We don't have to maintain, we don't have to make a big giant monolithic website that services someone who's curious about how the business is operating, who's on our board of directors, where our bylaws and so on. It's a small thing, but something of an experiment. It's the internet. We can do it. So we do maintain. Now, maintain is a strong word here. It's doing a lot of work. But now that we're starting our fifth fiscal year, we'll get into some of the excitement that has been learned over the last 4 years, but making better use of time and reprioritizing our short-term and medium-term goals will probably go a long way. So we we had our first board meeting, our final board meeting for the fiscal year, our annual board meeting on Friday. So we've only just begun, seated new board members and getting all the usual getting started, onboarding, etc. So we'll go through some of this stuff over the next couple of weeks. Our next board meeting is in July. And then we'll probably have a better idea of where we want to focus our individual energies to advance our group, our organization's goals and missions and so on. So there you go. On that note, I kind of mentioned this already, but we're going to have a little stream of consciousness episode today, since I've been in the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, I think I've been the managing director the whole time. Since before we decided to form a reboot of the original Code for Vegas organization. It was late 2021. It was probably like October, November 2021. The notion came to be. There it is. We incorporated as a Nevada nonprofit corporation on June 16th, 2022, but our fiscal year ends today, June 30th. Just to keep the birthday clear. So June 16th, incorporated. We were having these conversations in January. Only one person has been with our foundation for the duration and will continue to be until forced out or taken away. So reflections are from that perspective, and we'll give you one guess who that might be. I kind of gave it away already. So here's the retrospective. Get some water. So in 2022, and actually technically late 2021, Greater Vegas was coming out of the pandemic lockdown interval. There was a burst of energy injected into the so-called startup scene. I still do not care for that label, by the way, but people use it. Tech Alley was becoming kind of the beacon leading the way out of the darkness. So we did a lot of stuff with Tech Alley back then. I looked into reforming Code for Vegas, which had withered and then shut down as the downtown project became the shiny object, drawing all the attention in the Greater Vegas area back in the time of Code for Vegas, so many years earlier, say 2014, 15, 16, somewhere in there. Another person was also looking into this, so we teamed up and did some research, had some Zoom calls. That second party got a job offer on the other side of the country, so he departed. And I was left with the mission. And since we are in the future now, we are in the future now, we have some idea where that went. But before this person left, and I'm not referring to that person by name because he was never really a part of getting this up and running, other than he kind of facilitated this one meeting with the person affiliated with Code for America that everybody knew. I have not talked to either of these people in quite some time, so I didn't really ask them, or they don't have any input on this, so I'm just going to leave them as mysterious characters. We had our Zoom call and got some background, and here's what's going on. You got to talk to this person and do this and that. And we learned about the revisioning program and so on. I found out who the original Code for Vegas co-founder was. There were two. I knew one of them. And in fact, I had spoken to this person while they were still here in Vegas, still working for their employer in Vegas. At the time of Code for Vegas, and after I had met him, the organization kind of withered a little bit. It turns out there was really only, and this is from this person said this, so I'm not going by some strange recollection, mysterious anecdotal tales. This person said we never really had more than about 4 people in the core team of participants. And usually it was just he and his co-captain, co-founder of Code for Vegas. So that's disheartening a little bit, but it's something I completely believe now, 4 years in. But he agreed to be on our board of directors to help get things up and running. So that was actually very useful. And so we did. I had discussions with Code for America about rebooting Code for Vegas as a brigade again before we incorporated as a Nevada nonprofit. So between January and June, multiple Zoom calls, sitting in with Code for, what was it? I think it was Code for Hawaii now. I think they changed it to I honestly don't remember. I should know this, but I think they they got away from using Hawaii. Well, they certainly got away from using Code for. All right, I paused and I looked it up. So it used to be Code for Hawaii. And when Code for America was shutting down the brigade program, sunsetting it, rug pulling it, they did not want people using Code for, Hack for, or whatever. So they changed their name to Code with Aloha. So there you go. There you go. The person that we were supposed to interact with, who was in charge of the revisioning program, lived in, I think he still does, lived in Hawaii. So he was part of Code for Hawaii at the time. And so we sat in with their meetup via Zoom call, and I learned more about the revisioning process and how we could get back into Code for America. At the time, I thought that was the appropriate thing to do, and retrospectively, glad that didn't happen. So we had our board, we had our president, who was a sort of a well-known character. He was just graduating from high school, 18, of legal age to be in business. But so we had a minimal board, and we had a well-known person that could help engaging with younger people, and that is The Future, by the way. I don't know if anybody's told you this. It's a popular song lyric topic, that the future, the children are the future, teach them well, all that. It's a good idea. So we had those discussions. Like I said, we had several calls, emails, and I said, well, we're gonna go ahead and form our nonprofit. So no. The first thing that happened was we were going to have our first hackathon. It was going to be the Code for Vegas hackathon in March, I believe it was, of 2022. And I received a suggestion that we do not use the name Code for Vegas because that was still property of Code for America. Well, that right away, we're off to a bad start. There's always the reminder that for all the best of intentions, oh, that's right, you're still a company that would be overly concerned with such things. And so that was an unfortunate rift. That was the beginning of a rift. It became clear that they really were not going to go through with our rejoining Code for America. The revisioning, so that's revisioning with a capital R and a capital V, so revisioning or revisioning. So, we're going to make it easier to onboard new brigades and so on. But really, it was just a political infight that probably ended up with the sunsetting of the whole deal. So, yeah, those discussions stopped. The revisioning, whatever, it didn't really happen, kind of a flop. And we formed our own org, as I suggested, in June, once we had our first board of directors assembled. So we had people that were willing to take the plunge and restart Code for Vegas as the Code for Vegas Foundation, an independent Nevada nonprofit. Now, had we joined or rejoined or reaffiliated, and there was like an MOU thing that was thrown around, and because we are in modernity, we know that MOUs are worth slightly less than the paper they're not printed on. But there was an MOU making all sorts of commitments, and agreeing to sort of, it didn't have a good feeling to it. But anyway, so we formed our foundation. But had we rejoined or become affiliated again with Code for America, we could have been an independent nonprofit, and they would have been our fiscal sponsor. But we decided to go with our 1023-EZ filing. The 1023-EZ is as it sort of sounds like, an easier form of the 1023. You can form a 501c3 public charity, and the fee is lower, the paperwork filing requirements are lower, but you can only make gross receipts of $50,000 per year. Now, as I already intimated, we never got close to that. We were closer to the 50 than the 1,000. But generally speaking, we were able to completely comply with this limitation, gross revenue cap, gross receipts cap on any donations or any incoming funds. So never got close. So we filed our 990 postcard. Yes, we made less than 50,000. Okay, done. Far less. I guess it's nice that we don't have to be transparent about how awesome our financial support has been. So we filed the 1023, became a standalone 501c3 public charity. It was, of course, retroactive to our formation date, and that's how that works. So we have been a public charity, a 501c3 public charity, since we incorporated as a Nevada nonprofit June of 2022. So that's 4 years. See how that works? Math. Rumor had it at the time that other Code for America brigades, and remember, the revisioning process, and I think probably some other internal shenanigans were leading people to think maybe being separated would be better. They were looking at our organization and asking, why did we get to be independent from Code for America? And maybe they would like to also be independent. But we were the Code for Vegas Foundation, and this ruffled some feathers. And from what I understood through the grapevine, this led to some internal angst and an eventual letter from not only from the legal, the person in charge of a Code for America employee who was kind of the interface to their corporate counsel. It was an outside law firm. And so first I received an email from internally, and then I received something of a cease and desist from a law firm. And we don't have an attorney. That is a different story for a different time. I didn't file a bar complaint. Probably should have. But anyway, the characters involved in our story are several and varied. But I responded to both, and I said the Code for America person and the law firm person, the lawyer, and I said, no, we're not doing anything that you're offering here. Basically prove that you own the name. I basically put up a little fight in email, which is easy to do, of course. And we never heard back from anybody. And then shortly after, they sunset the entire thing. They call it sunsetting, whatever. But anyway, so the various organizations, the brigades and soon-to-be former brigades, were kind of letting it be known that they were curious to know if they could do something similar, break off from tight coupled. Let me mix our grammar today. So much tight coupling with Code for America, they could be independent organizations. And so we at Code for Vegas put together a Project ACT, ACT, for autonomous cohort transformation to share what we were learning along the way. So the idea was to put together resources and maybe have some meetups and see, here's what we did and what could you learn, and not legal advice by any means. I just went through that. But my advice, certainly legal or otherwise. But so that was on the table. But this was right before the actual sunset announcement. And then soon after that, they had a little countdown of sorts. And then by the end of I think they got a couple of months of an extension to make sure people could offboard, because everybody was depending on Zoom and Slack and whatever else. So in order to sort of more comfortably move to other resources, other platforms and tools, they extended the time a little bit, but eventually the brigade program was completely shut down. And that made everybody transformed. So Project ACT was not really essential anymore, except that it became clear because I would go and attend virtual online meetups with other brigades and now former brigades and having the conversations in the Discord that I will mention shortly. It was becoming clear that there's now no, everybody was used to having a top-down centralized authority to sort of provide and direct. And no, those had been removed with Code for America withdrawing from the brigade program. So Project ACT became the autonomous cohort tessellation, but I'll get to that in a second. So Code for America eventually sunset the brigade program completely. Everybody was suddenly able to become independent, right? For better or worse. This was not something everybody was ready for, that we did not rejoin Code for America, of course, so we were already moved on. We were never in a position to have to deal with the sunsetting. We did have, so I'm going to get to the other act in a moment. So we had had a single champion with the city of Las Vegas and very little awareness of the whole business outside of that. The city of Las Vegas people had very little awareness. So speaking to other members of the city staff and other departments and so on, completely oblivious. While the original Code for Vegas was proactively involved with the Open Data Project here in Vegas, which is still in operation today. We did a podcast with the person who was in charge of the GIS department, which manages all the data. And they've recently been adding people. So now instead of having one person in the department, there is more than one. So that's encouraging, maybe. But very few people on the city staff are still around who remember that affiliation. Certainly nobody remembers Code for Vegas anymore. And that number is continuing to shrink. It is. I wrote continued, threw me off. Continuing to shrink. Our champion retired, in fact, and left some headaches behind that we still have to deal with. Too bad. It's been a substantial problem. The fact that the city of Las Vegas really has no idea how to be supportive of an organization like this. So it's been some motivation, and this was why, for example, we don't do municipal partnerships. While our champion was still working with the city, we were booked full weekends, one each month, like the second or fourth weekend of each month, depending on when in the timeline. That's too much detail, so we'll just leave it at that. We had our monthly hackathon meetup at the International Innovation Center in downtown Las Vegas, and it was free because it was supporting local innovation for a good cause, or however the rules were to enable use of the facility. And it was great for us. We had these monthly meetups and we had reasonable attendance. One time I think we had about 20 people, about somewhere in there, which is record breaking. Now in the real world, that's not enough, but hey, we're still in our early days. 20 people come by to see what the monthly hackathon meetup is. Turns out these were really just people coming to hang out. We would be asked if there was free food, and then we had very few people returning. So nobody would come to the meetups to discuss actually advancing any sort of initiatives, projects. Never really had questions, really more along the lines of, so what is this? So we were also having our finale at Tech Alley each month as well. The idea was to have, like, as we were progressing through our hackathon meetups, finale at Tech Alley would be, okay, we've completed some progress. We've completed first milestone. So yay, here we go. Here's a presentation, opportunity to do demos and so on. Unfortunately, people would come to, we would have more people show up to that because they were already at Tech Alley. So that kind of throws off your assessment of viability of a meetup. Different conversation. But we would have a room full of people very curious about what we're doing. And the people of Vegas treat that as participation. That has become clear over the years. So, hey, I showed up. I've participated. This is not how that works. It's like, hey, I'm going to come by and help with the painting. I'll do the watching the paint dry part. Yeah, not quite. So they were coming in, they were here. They were asking questions at our meetups here contemporaneously. But they were not actually participating. They were not coming to the hackathon meetup. They were not really interested in doing anything. They just wanted to hear about what other people were doing. So that's a bit of a learning experience right there for us. We changed the ordering of our monthly meetup. So initially it was Hackathon Meetup and then Meetup at Tech Alley. We moved the hackathon to after Tech Alley. So that way we could talk to people at Tech Alley and say, well, next weekend we're having our monthly hackathon meetup. So see if you can come by. Nobody ever did. Initially a little bit, but essentially, hey, I came to the thing at Tech Alley. Why would I come to another thing? So eventually we just canceled both. It was just not worth the time. We would eventually have 0 people participating in the monthly hackathon meetup. So, one person shows up, me, I can do that from home. The civic volunteer interest was dropping off. And not only in Vegas, conversations among people who were doing something similar in other parts of the country were stuck in the post-brigade era. Like during the pandemic lockdowns, there was some reduction in participation, and then that trend appeared to be continuing in some places. Can't really make universal statements about so much difference between various places. Code for Philly, I believe, still has some participation, some active participation. Everything happening in New York in the way of civic tech, civic innovation, and so on is probably like the most. It's kind of setting the bar. So Beta NYC and anything else going on there, it's a lot. I suggested that the people and the organizations that still had some participation, including those discussing why there was so little participation, I would attend a meetup now and then, and it would be, nobody's coming to ours either. And I said, well, if there's 10 people in a meetup, an online meetup even, and we're all discussing how nobody's showing up anymore, there's at least 10 people showing up. So how can we do something with that? And nobody really seemed to buy into that notion. Didn't really catch on, certainly among former brigades. And this, by the way, is how open source software development works. You have different people across different regions who collaborate, because you don't have like all the necessary people with the necessary time in one place so they can meet up in person. So they meet up online. They use tools like GitHub or GitLab or who knows what else. There's plenty of options out there to collaborate, and not everything has to be code even. So it could be just about anything. Open source software is popular, but you can do a lot of things at a distance, especially because everybody has learned to work from home, for better or worse. So somewhere in here that we adjusted Project Act. No real need for a transformation anymore. Like I said, everybody was pretty much forced upon them to transform into unaffiliation with Code for America. So transformation was not a topic of interest. So now autonomous cohort tessellation was the thing. A tessellation is a mosaic, but I needed to fit it into that acronym, ACT. Let me change one typo here. So autonomous cohort tessellation was basically, if you can imagine, a mosaic, a tile wall of sorts perhaps, where the tiles represent different cohorts and different initiatives and projects that they're working on. They're all working on civic innovation pursuits, different parts of the country. So now you have a visualization that you can implement. There's some other stuff that goes with that, some actual explicit data. So that rather than maintaining, one person maintaining the spreadsheet of the different brigades and former brigades and so on, which was the state of affairs with all manner of outdated information, that's a top-down centralized structure. Why do that again? So this notion was, why do we enable people to take part in a discovery mechanism that already exists, right? We'll take some existing lessons learned from past decades, and we'll make use of these older technologies. Now, it turns out that the older technologies are actually very useful for AI tools, structured data. So not that we set out to do that, but coincidentally, spreadsheets are not as useful as structured data that can be maintained in a decentralized manner. So Project Act became that, the tessellation. And over time, it has become clear that this has other uses also. Basically, if you want to create your own network of individuals and cohorts, that applies to a lot of things. So think bottom up, like you don't have to, you can just be a part of the network. You decentralize all the connections. The connection, communication, and collaboration don't need a central authority. You don't have to flow through, a connection at a Code for America level, for example. So any groups of similar interests can discover each other and connect, and communicate, and collaborate, and that's the goal of that. At the same time, the Alliance of Civic Technologists was coming to life. Now, I'm getting the ordering off a little bit, but in the past, so the Alliance of Civic Technologists, also ECT, was kind of it was forming out of the former brigade discord, and I don't know if that's grammatically appropriate, I suppose. So there was this discord group of the former brigades, and we were not a brigade again, but we had been a brigade. So, okay, sure, I can join and have the conversation. That's where our office hours emerged from a conversation on there. But, and I sat in. So once they were becoming the Alliance of Civic Technologists, I took part in conversations. I joined, I think, 2 Zoom calls, and it became clear that at best, the Alliance was an effort to rebuild the Code for America in some form, at best. And, or maybe that should be at worst. They're just trying to recreate, put the band back together of sorts. So maybe that's at worst. And then at best, it was a social gathering. So, okay, social gathering. I'll say, as of right now, it appears to not even be a social gathering. So who knows? Either way, we did not join what they call ECT, obviously a name collision. But my use of Project Act came first. So we have contemporaneous emails and so on with references. Not that has come up. And for a while, I thought it would come up because it seemed like there maybe would be some contention there, but I don't think so. So we're fine. The first half of our 4 years, so the first 2 years, were very educational, certainly for me. We learned the lay of the land here in Vegas and across the civic volunteer universe beyond Vegas. For example, Hack for Reno was another brigade. And in fact, when I was having these conversations with Code for America about rebooting Code for Vegas, they said, oh, you should talk to the people at Hack for Reno. They're also going to restart or reform or re-energize. They were going to go through the revisioning process themselves. And of course, none of that ever happened. And Hack for Reno just recently let their domain name expire. One of them, I think they had 2 domains. Hey, it's a trend. One of either Hack number 4 Reno or Hack FOR Reno expired, and the other one is still around. But they've archived all of their projects on GitHub, and they're not really. They never responded to our outreach one single time. Never. Sorry, I was taking some water there, and it didn't go down right. So yeah, we learned a lot in the first 2 of the 4 years. Vegas itself is part of Nevada. Vegas and Nevada both don't know quite what to do with this stuff. That's the take home. The Nevada mindset, I think it's because it's just an extraction economy. So really it has come down to, and I've found this to be true multiple times. Why don't you show us what you have first, and then we'll think about supporting this. Yeah, but okay. So the lay of the land outside of Nevada, however, is varied and still, in some places, still vital, as in, things are happening. Other places, not so much. Excuse me, man, this water kind of messed me up a little bit. It's a good thing we don't have much of it left. Most of the people in the space, in the civic volunteer, civic innovation space, are reflexively interested in civic tech, Code for America, Code for different places. People lean heavily into civic tech, which is sort of limiting. But then when there's meetups, and they're quick to point out that, but you don't have to be. You can be interested in other things. You don't have to be like a programmer. So they welcome other people. We solved that with our name change early on. So we went from Code for Vegas to Innovate for Vegas. Occasionally people would ask, if I'm not a coder, can I participate? Now, where are those people today? Because they never really came back to participate. But we did change our name to align with the general branding of, that was like a little hiccup. I don't know what that was. Water causing problems. Code for Vegas to Innovator Vegas. Okay, so we changed our name because the Innovation District, we're a global innovation hub. I'll let you think about that one for a minute. The International Innovation Center, where we had our hackathon meetups. So basically, innovation can take any form. So getting away from code specific and moving to more generic innovation made sense anyway. And then, of course, we would never have to deal with Code for America again in case they did decide to bring up our name again, which now they have no basis. So we focus on civic innovation rather than civic tech. And it's a fitting label, and we have started using more and more civic innovation, civic volunteers, civic innovation. Two great tastes. Code for America did not recognize civic volunteer time, effort, and expertise contributed to their projects, in my opinion. I did some exploring, and I talked to some other people who kind of felt the same way. Even though we haven't had much of it, our infrastructure is forming, and our ethos is such that we treat civic volunteer time, effort, and expertise as gold. At the same time, I should say, we do need to see, this part I wrote down. We do need to see more proactive interest in showing up more than once to see if there is free food. So while we are trying to respect the time and value the time, effort, and expertise that civic volunteers bring, it doesn't really count if they come by and say, is there free food? And then they leave. So we do have a little bit of an activation energy issue to get people to understand the value proposition moving forward. That's what our fifth year will be about for the most part. So part of the rigmarole that we've gone through in the second 2 years, so we weren't very productive in the first 2 years. The second 2 years has been mostly about trying to figure out who wants to actually participate, and that means civic volunteers or what it would be sometimes referred to as municipal partners, but that's not even a focus anymore. But really just finding people who are interested in doing something other than liking a post on LinkedIn, which for all practical purposes is nothing. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't help anything. It doesn't advance any causes. For the most part, it doesn't even help people become more aware of what we're trying to accomplish. So we have a pretty steep hill in front of us as far as just getting the word out in the absence of real support from the very communities that we're trying to elevate. So it sounds like a little bit of a rant, but also, as I said at the top of the show, this is real. This is keeping it real. So the goals, the mission, the purpose, our purpose statement, by the way, which I haven't mentioned, I usually try to get that in here somewhere, to enable and encourage ideation, innovation, and implementation to make our communities better. Okay, not code, not hackathons are a part of it, but we're not focused on those things. Those are means to an end. The end is community elevation. And along the way, job skills and life skills development by having people collaborate with each other on these projects, not for money, but for other forms of satisfaction, like, a job well done. Look, we actually help people, and so on and so on. So that part has been a supreme challenge, and trying to figure out how to do that, especially with only one board member and no one else coming on to help with anything, made the fourth year one of, let's call it reevaluation. But we're jumping ahead. We facilitated a NASA Space Apps Challenge event. 2 years ago? 2023. Oh, it's coming up on 3 years ago. It was 2023. So it was in October, first weekend, October, I think it is. So we had 12 participants, 12. Global Hub of Innovation. This is a global, NASA Space Apps Challenge is a global hackathon. Couldn't even get the city of Las Vegas to mention it to anyone. Certainly didn't have any real participation from educators or anyone. That was a learning experience in and of itself. So we had 12 participants, and just by way of comparison, although comparing these numbers is not really the idea, but just as a sense, like checking the weather, like is the weather 82 degrees or 83 degrees? That's a comparison that's like, okay, somewhere there. If it's between 82 degrees and 122 degrees, that's where the numbers actually start to matter, like these huge differences. So Silicon Valley had 250 participants. There were some other places around the country that were kind of in between there, between 12 and 250. But I think Silicon Valley in the US had the most This is from memory. I could be wrong, but they were either first or up there as far as actual participation numbers. And again, we're really looking at the difference between 12 and 250. But Cairo had 1,200 participants in person. 1,200. That's 1,200 people. That's 100 times. 100 times. Math. 100 times the participation in Vegas. And I would sort of half seriously say, well, Cairo has been an innovation hub for thousands of years. You can look around and see some of the work. So 1,200 people showed up. Now, Hyderabad, India was once again based on what information was available from NASA's Space Apps Challenge portal, was once again the number one with a combined or hybrid, in-person and virtual participation closer to about 1,500 people. So if we're looking just checking the weather, Vegas has ways to go. It's important that people in the communities are interested enough to be innovative that they would join in outside. This wasn't even civic innovation. This was purely space-related challenges. But if you don't have people who are intellectually curious and interested in participating in civic innovation, like looking around and trying to make things better and so on, you have to wonder if there is sufficient innovation culture, which is ultimately one of our goals, is to cultivate that culture. We had, as far as municipal partners, the city of Las Vegas, no interest in really participating in anything we're doing at all. And that's the way it is. At this point, just straight out ghosting. They don't really respond in any way. So we don't reach out. The Regional Transportation Commission, the RTC, which operates the public transit system and tries to they try to make sure that somewhere in Greater Vegas, there is a road that is under construction and requiring traffic diversion. So they do a really good job of that. There's always multiple locations. The bus system here could use some work. Our first hackathon was open transit, initial interest, then ghosting. So, so again, not trying to rant too much. This is life on the ground, trying to get this going in Vegas. So, and this is what we've learned over the first 3 years for sure, was we have our work cut out for us, getting the word out, finding people who are interested in participating, satisfying the what's in it for me or show me what you got proclivities that are pervasive or even universal here in the Greater Vegas culture as it is. I don't know if you heard that car, but production by street has to happen at least once. The RTC stopped responding, and so we gave up trying to collaborate with them. We could still do our open transit project initiative, but not with them. We just have no need to collaborate with people who have no desire to collaborate back. From all of this, Agile for Volunteers has emerged from all these experiences to help make the most of civic volunteer time, effort, and expertise by increasing the amount of communication we commit in written form, and to enable external participation more easily if we can get buy-in to Project Act. So what that means, obviously I've written some of these things out at the end here. Everybody who has ever done Agile has their own view of Agile. Often the people who have been involved with an Agile project management infrastructure implemented in their workplace are using something that has been corrupted by the Agile industrial complex. So coaches and a lot of forms to fill out. Now we have forms, but I'll get to that in a second. A lot of forms, a lot of stand-up, a lot of they've basically turned Agile into a way to satisfy management need, but they're undoing the value proposition of Agile as it was first proposed. There's nothing magic about Agile, but one thing that people forget is that part of the original Agile manifesto included the words to the effect of always evaluate how you're using these tools and whatever else, and try to make them better. Like, you don't have to follow Agile because it is written down. You can start with Agile and say, well, this part works, this part doesn't. I believe it was Uncle Bob. I can't remember his last name now. Anyway, Uncle Bob, one of the people in the room forming Agile. He has a number of books that are very interesting. I've read them all. What's his name? All right, I paused and I looked. It's Robert Martin. Uncle Bob. So he's been programming forever. And somebody said something on Twitter. He gets too political on Twitter, so I don't really. Twitter gets too political, so I don't really use Twitter anymore. But he made a comment. Somebody said, "Oh, I don't like the stand-ups," or whatever it was. He said, "So don't do the stand-ups." None of the Agile Manifesto, none of the things we set out are requirements. You're supposed to use them as tools, and you put them together in a way that works for your team. So from that, Agile for Volunteers takes some of the parts, like, for example, whole team, like everybody who wants to participate participates, and you all have a say and input on, how we're going to accomplish things. Because we're a civic volunteer organization and we don't partner with municipalities, the people driving our initiatives are the people that are going to work on them. Eventually, we would want to include the people who would use what we're developing, or would benefit from it, our community elevation efforts. So we would involve the community. But when it comes to, like, nobody's going to sit down for 2 weeks and write a spec, right? Unless that's appropriate for, like, oh, we're going to design a bridge. We're going to need some mechanical engineering time. We got to do some math. That's a special case. The general case, we create user stories, right? How is somebody going to use this? What do we want to accomplish so that this person's use case, this scenario, can be addressed? As a person with limited mobility, I cannot reach the button to hit the walk button to cross the street. So I need to make sure that the landscaping is such that you can spell out these use cases without over specifying. And then if another user story comes up, like, oh, now somebody who's vision impaired, obviously I'm leaning into accessibility here because that's important. But generally speaking, you don't write specs ahead of time. You write stories, you write user stories. This is an extensible specification of sorts. So the blue sky documents, like, here's what we kind of want to accomplish. Let's turn it into things that we specifically want to accomplish to satisfy the needs and requirements of the people we're trying to build this for, whatever it is. Okay. Do we have stand-up meetings? No. We do have an iteration scheme, 2 weeks usually. And all we would ask of the volunteers is that to commit to the 2 weeks and then write down what you did. And here's what you were trying to accomplish. And here's what you did accomplish according to the user story and all that. That seems like so much headache and too much work. The alternative is somebody that spends some time and then disappears and never completes a task or never completes a part of a project or whatever it is. Well, all this is churning up volunteer time with nothing to hand off, nothing to lead to a path toward completing and deploying and so on, whatever it is. So you end up with trying to manage the volunteer time instead of trying to manage progress. And by manage, I don't mean there's a formal project management infrastructure. We don't do the agile coaching and whatnot. Yeah, there's somebody who's like administratively willing to spend more time, making sure things are sorted and make sense. But for the most part, this is a collaborative effort. And so everybody's kind of, you could say it's a flat organization, mostly. From the civic volunteer standpoint, yes. I always tell people, don't think of yourself as working for me. I'm the managing director of the business side. But as far as these activities, you don't work for me. I'm not your development manager. I'm not your project owner, things like this. In the open source and project world, yes, there's an upstream owner, maintainers, and all this stuff. But we're not paying anyone. We're a 100% civic volunteer organization. So people should be thinking, I am working here because I want to work on this to improve that. I'm going to collaborate with my peers, this cohort. I don't take orders. I'm not a managed person. So we're all kind of responsible for ourselves. Logically, you're going to need somebody who can delete things and manage who gets added to a team and all that stuff. But that's not quite the same as collaborating. Right. So Agile for Volunteers is heavily collaboration centric and communication centric so that we can make the most of the time that people do spend, even if it's only 2 weeks. Rather than disappearing, how about complete that 2 weeks and add something that we can use to the initiative, the component project. And then if you can't come back, okay, that's fine because you're a volunteer. But the Irish goodbye, if you're not familiar, that's where you just leave. You don't say goodbye to anybody. You just kind of sneak out the back and you're done. That's not really useful. So Agile for Volunteers aims to address how we interact with people who do have 2 weeks of their time to give, or how we interact with people from other cohorts and other places if they would like to contribute, or if we're working on something and they, whoever they are, far away, they're working on something and it turns out we could help each other, right? Oh, if you can contribute to this and then we'll contribute to what you're working on there, or we can link up the two different viewpoints and we'll come up with some sort of a thing at the any number of things are possible, but you have to communicate first and you have to be able to describe what you're working on. And it turns out there's the ironies. There seems to be this new thing that's been discovered in the age of AI. It's called spec-driven development, where you write down what you want. So writing specifications ahead of time is something no software person likes to do, for example. And now they're basically saying, oh, this is what you'll do all the time. This is the new software engineering, is writing specs. So sort of, I'm simplifying. But so what we are trying to accomplish is not so outlandish, although we do try to remain connected to human civic volunteers. So Agile for Volunteers factors into that. Project ACT factors into that. They're sort of related but orthogonal. Okay, enough time on that. This is the final bullet item. With 2 of our directors going silent early in our third fiscal year, I think it was sometime in the winter. So they kind of were off doing their own thing. Eventually, it looks like they've formed a company. Who knows what they're doing? So they stopped really participating in what we're doing here, and it just became clear that we have entered a civic volunteer winter in general. And again, from conversations with other people, are people showing up to your meetups? Are you making progress? Things have slowed down. 1 or 2 people maybe now and then, they don't come back. It's a familiar story. So they eventually left the board, but this was in May last year, which left very little time. Even though now I'll say I had very little time to identify their successors. So our 4th year, this past year that's ending today, was actually one of rest and redesign by the one lone remaining managing director. This is not to say that I'm not always reaching out to people and always mentioning what we're doing. And hey, if you're ever interested in being, participating, joining the board, any level of participation or support or just knowing what we're doing, I do that all the time. So I didn't just spend 1 month, but I did only have 1 month before we had to file our annual list, which meant I did so with one name on it. So that was kind of an odd feeling, but we are entering our 5th year tomorrow. In a better way. And we'll talk about that more once our board of directors is, we've had our annual board meeting, our one annual board meeting. That's how that works, annual board meeting. But we had the one and only meeting with other people at it on Friday last week. So, still putting together email addresses and GitHub accounts and all the things. So we'll do more detailed introductions and so on in the coming, hopefully before our next board meeting, which is in late July. So all that said, it's been an interesting 4 years. What I have come away with personally is that if you want to do something and if you want to do something that you find valuable and ultimately, and not necessarily for the money, but just you can assess value however you want. Everything that we're working on is not Vegas centric. There are some reasons to treat Vegas as an interesting place for civic innovation. But if you're doing stuff, whatever it is, for reasons that you believe in, then you cannot wait for the city of Las Vegas or the city of North Las Vegas or the city of Henderson or the city of Boulder City or unincorporated Clark County or the GOED, Governor's Office of Economic Development of Nevada. You cannot wait for people to give you their approval. You just do it. Go around. And so that's basically the attitude that we're taking, is that we can accomplish a lot of things. Thing is a suitably generic term. We can accomplish a lot by doing it, not waiting. And some of that is entrepreneurialism, entrepreneurship, right? Entrepreneurs, if you're an entrepreneur, but you're waiting for someone else to solve your problem or give you permission, maybe you want to recheck the definition of entrepreneur or how you're viewing it. So everything we're doing has this sort of, bottom up, not waiting for central planning, not waiting for permission. Hey, this seems like a good idea. Let's try it. So in the most recent year, the fourth year, since it was just me, there like I said, there's been a little bit of resetting, reassessing of how we're going to accomplish things. We need to reach out to people who are interested in participating, but who also have experience. So trying to find students who want to work on civic innovation is a good goal, but you cannot start with only students, because then everybody wants to know what they're supposed to do, and we're not operating a school. We're not here to educate. This is not a learn to code. It's not the Khan Academy. So there's an assumption that you have some sort of an interesting skill or ability or superpower, and you'd like to apply that to civic innovation, community elevation. So having people experienced with mentoring and actually rolling up some sleeves now and then and doing some things so that we can say, look, here's what we're talking about. Here's a demonstration, to get that lean in or aha moment. But I think there was an expectation in our first 2 years that there would be sort of a coding school, or I need you to tell me everything I'm supposed to do ahead of time. And that puts a tremendous amount of load on the people who are volunteering. Like, I don't know, I can't think of anyone right now, but so if people say, oh, you need to provide me with more before I'm willing to do anything, and then I'm probably not going to come back, that sets up an interesting dynamic. And so a learning experience. So moving forward, there isn't really much point in trying to recruit people. All we can do is mention, as you may have heard, if you've listened to these episodes, or if you're following our LinkedIn page, good, I guess. The value of LinkedIn, another learning experience. Showing up is better than liking a post. If you've been paying attention, we're doing, I don't know why I think this is funny, but it's just so bizarre that there's such a disconnect, not just what we're doing, but in general, there is such a disconnect between what's happening in different areas. Like everybody knows about the gaming economy, the fun economy, trademark, held by UNLV Office of Economic Development. If you ask someone on the street, hey, what kind of stuff is going on in Vegas? Oh, we got professional sports, we got gambling, of course. Nobody's going to say, oh, this is like the global innovation hub of the century. We're the number one city with job opportunities in tech. Yeah, those are dubious claims. We'll see. But anyway, we are driving the City Camp Las Vegas 2026 event in September. City Camp is a program co-founded by the original founder of Code for America, Jennifer Polka, if I'm saying that correctly. So she and someone else formed this, and then I guess this is the way. It has now been handed over, like oversight or shepherding the City Camp program has been handed over to, drumroll please, the Alliance of Civic Technologists. So the nice thing about City Camp, though, is it is not centrally planned. It is not a top-down effort. It is something that people actually can do. You don't really have to ask permission. You just say, I'm going to have a City Camp event in Las Vegas. It's an open source event, if you like. So there's really not much in the way of trademarked assets and so on. They have a code of conduct. They have some ideas for different type of topic areas. They generally have the messaging about what City Camp is, or what it should be, or is supposed to be, or intended to be. So we can boot up a City Camp event for September. And we actually put this together after the Smarter Smart City Challenge, which was originally going to be happening right now, but it made more sense to start in January and have the full year. So we're going to have the Smarter Smart City Challenge of 2027, starts in January after New Year's sometime, runs a full year. Why a full year? Because sometimes people can't make it to I got to stay awake for 2 days hackathon because they have life, work, school, right? Not everybody wants to stay awake all the time. So 1 full year, there will be some events sprinkled in through the year, and keeping people interested and making sure we're recognizing and celebrating people making progress and being involved. You can join in anytime. Oh, I couldn't sign up by January 2nd. That's okay. It's February 2nd. You can sign up right before the end if you want, By the way, that was the same terms as the NASA Space Apps Challenge. You could join at any time during the hackathon. So that was a shorter window of time. Here, it's all year. And then there's some other things we'll be putting together to make sure that people do get recognized and celebrated for being participants and for accomplishing things. Achievement and accomplishment are two different things, but they do go well together. So all of these things are about engaging our community directly, not waiting for LinkedIn posts and likes and whatever, but actually reaching out directly into our community. So information sharing is a strong weakness here, or a weak strength. No, the relying on local press is a lost cause. Relying on social media content creators, nah, not going to happen. We would need to either build or tear down something, or donate Cybertrucks to our police department, or we have to make these grand and expensive gestures to even get on the radar here. Otherwise, Vegas, the greater Vegas area, is very much a show me what you got first culture. That is not directly compatible with the innovation culture we seek to cultivate, but we'll see where that goes. So yeah, year 5 should be very interesting. We have 2 interesting board members that have joined for a total of 3. Honestly, it would be nice if we had 1 more local board member. Those are hard to come by. For everyone who said, oh yeah, I'll help, I'll look. No, nobody actually does. So the take home for Vegas is it is an uphill climb. You must be truly interested in what's possible and ignore what appears to be probable and just assume that you did the math wrong and that anything is probable as so long as it is possible. And even if it's not possible, still try a little bit. So we'll see what happens. It should be interesting. Tomorrow is a whole new ball game beginning. Administratively, I mean, we've already kind of gotten the ball rolling. So that's it. That's what we got. That's been 4 years of learning, 4 years of building a greater understanding of the terrain in which we are attempting to operate here in the greater Vegas area. And we'll see what happens. We will see what happens. That's it. That's the little mini retrospective about mostly what I've learned, but some of the lessons should be learned by anybody who is watching or paying attention. Yeah, I'll leave it there. I could go on for another hour, but I will not. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your support of our organization in whatever form it has taken over the last 4 years. And we'll look forward to keeping you around for the 5th year. We'll see what happens. Okay, we'll see what happens is a phrase I'm using too much. Let us actually do what happens. Bye-bye.